a decent amount of the time, but it's like
You got to
gotta
come
do
down.
it.
Got to
Gotta
come
exactly.
see a different side of the world. It's all prairie and plains up your way, so yeah, come on down. Check out the.
Well, that's if you go east, which sucks because literally you can watch your dog run away for a week straight. It's so flat. But if you go west, there's the Rocky Mountains and then the coastal mountains, and well, that the West Coast and the Rockies, they're epic if you've never been, and if you have seen and been. There's a reason why Banff National Park and Lake Louise and Jasper
And more.
right, Canmore, and it's like that's literally my backyard, and the things I have found and discovered there, as well as so many others along the chain, whether it's Montana or British Columbia or further up, it's pretty wild. And well, it then connects down as well with the Badlands and Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and the Grand Canyon, essentially, and that it's like there's just this massive, devastated, like cooked out nukes, like poisoned, probably like sea bleached, maybe even where what they call it's badlands, nothing grows, and it's like, why is that? Because from my own research, I've found like in southern Alberta's badlands, there's literally ancient terraces and all this like built advanced like agricultural um architecture and terraforming into it all. So it's like you see this throughout, whether it's in like Yemen, in Iran, in
Even in
place,
India.
yeah, and also in like South Africa a bunch, and like Peru. It's throughout, and it's that it's all over the world, and then they call it Badlands, and there's no longer anything living, growing, or surviving in there. Uh, Another great example is South America, Peru, Bolivia areas as well. And but it's like it's recognized, well, they have to because of like the actual megalithic leftover structures, the like super advanced ancient like aqueducts, and like they run from like the Andes mountains throughout the Peruvian deserts and like to the ocean, and it's like I think like 1,000 kilometers or miles or something, and it's like three-quarters of it's underground that it was built,
I
and it's just the engineering is absolutely insane, but it's that we've now found it throughout all of these ancient sites. And shout out to Michael Collins, Wandering Wolf. He's done like probably some of the best documenting of it throughout what's called the Carteret tracks, but in fact, they're definitely not from carts or ruts, and are in fact leftover ancient aquifers and
here.
agricultural waterways, and that I've literally now found them throughout the Badland sites of Alberta, Canada. He's documented them in Texas. They're known throughout like the Mediterranean, whether it's Malta, whether it's Greece, Italy, Lebanon, anywhere, Libya. It's they're all over, and that this was this past previous mega civilization, and that it seems like it was all cast, that it was this geopolymer that they made and on a macro grand scale, and that it's like they most likely weren't actually having to cut out these 1,000-ton blocks and physically move them. It's like they ground it down to dust, turned it into these cement compounds, and then poured it into actual casings and structures. I'm not sure, Hans, if you saw a video I did a couple weeks ago reviewing, showing Rex Bear at Leak Project, where he went through Los Alamos.
Didn't see
Uh,
that.
okay,
Interesting.
I actually got to bring that up because it's where I had the revelation of actually what we're looking uh, at what it the blocks throughout geology and these parallel lines, these straight lines, and it's like what that actually is the leftover like mold or from like the molding from the forming or the forms, right? So you would have wood forms that you pour it into, and it's like I've learned this now from working in construction, pouring concrete and seeing it in today's concrete, and like, oh, that's a straight wood line from the form that was the wood that it poured into, and then it's like that. And now it's like with that perspective, looking at all of, especially the limestone and sandstone and some of the also granite stuff, but granite, I believe it's like scaliola, not geopolymer, is the technical term for the same process of liquefied um, cement style of
Granite.
the granite's minerals, and that it's a chemical compound bonding that so it's a chemical reaction that crystallizes that rock into that solid rock that has this Mohs hardness scale of like 7 to 9, especially in the granite dolerite sort of stuff. And they're like, how does it cut? How did they move it all? And it's like, well, they just ground it down into powder and then you recrystallize it. And that's so much different and exponentially stronger on the bonding level than our modern crappy concrete, which is like a sedimentary formation of just water drying out and it like packing together, and that's the best. And that is why ancient Roman concrete is
Here,
documented and known that it's still a mystery of how did they make it and how has it lasted all these thousands of years and so much stronger. And it's like, well, we do know, and it's chemical reaction, chemical bonding, geopolymer sort of chemistry.
well, it's interesting. Obviously, the ancients had some sort of alchemy because you look at the Amazon and it's all, excuse me, it's all made from terra preta. And so terra preta is a man-made soil that they use biochar and all sorts of other elements, and they would pack it and pack it and pack it, with feces and other things, and create this rich alluvian soil. And this is what 90% of the Amazon is made up of. It's all man-made, and then obviously something happened in the world, and it was all left derelict. And when they do radar scans and LiDAR going over the Amazon, they're starting to recognize that there's these massive city complexes within the Amazon that could have held millions of people. And nobody knows what happened to these cultures. And so if they're making terra preta on a level like that, where they can grow sustainable foods and whatnot, I'm sure they had alchemical aspects where they could create or recreate stone. And so that's interesting that you say that, because even going to Peru and seeing some of the ancient sites at Peru, you kind of got to wonder, okay, how are they putting these, polyagonal shapes together perfectly without some sort of, using this geopolymer in a bag and then forming it, and then you burn the bag off, and you see the evidence of what do you call it when you burn stone? You get like a crystallization on the surface of the stone all over Peru. And so there's obviously an aspect of this that is interesting and could be potentially true. And there's a French guy who was thinking that maybe this is how the pyramids were built. However, having seen the Great Pyramid and the Middle Pyramid and the Small Pyramid at Giza, none of those blocks are identically the same size, and so they would not have been using the same mold, which is
No,
interesting.
well, that's the key, Hans, is that they literally intentionally made
Oh,
every mold slightly different for that polygonal structure wise that absorbs like the earthquakes or the
that,
energy, and that
yeah,
makes them earthquake proof. And that it's like you're just building with wood, making the forms, and then pouring each one differently or on its own,
notice
filling
that
that space.
That's what you notice at the Great Pyramid. It's like you look at it and it's like none of these stones are the same size, but they all interlock, to some degree. Obviously, there's been a lot of earthquakes there, and you see the evidence of that.
And
But if
so,
you
from a logical engineering point of view, Hans, think of, instead of having to carve each one of those individually different and placing it and then measuring the different things in between, it's like, no, you just take these wood forms, make the box, and pour this one, then do the next one, then do the next one. And it's like you'd intentionally be like taking wood that is just from the tree, not trying to all make it the exact same 2x4 or 4x4 whatever. It's like, all right, we're just getting whatever we can to fill that spot, and then you make it like that intentionally, and that is the polygonal style of the megalithic or cyclopean style of megaliths that they say. And it's like, no, that is super advanced, and that was from a global macro civilization that they were using and pouring and doing the geopolymer concrete style.
Agreed. And, like you said, most of these areas are sitting over ley lines, and ley lines are sitting over massive aquifers of water or water bodies. And there's geological movement there. And so they built these structures so that they could withstand that. If you're building something that has the exact same size stone everywhere, you're going to have, like the Romans, marching across the bridge in lockstep. You're going to create this resonance energy effect that's eventually going to rip the structure apart. But if they're all different sizes, then that energy dissipates differently and it doesn't rip the structures apart, which is why the Romans decided instead of doing lockstep, everybody would do shuffle step. So
yes, this is live, and that's exactly it, right? And we're just starting to refigure that out. So I'm gonna play here, and what we're showing, that's Rex Bear, and these are these caves right outside of Los Alamos, New Mexico, and this supposed cart rut. And Rex also saying, no, this is clearly agriculture. And Hans, I figured you would definitely like what's directly in front of that and above that, what almost looks like those quote unquote scoop marks there on the
all
side.
over Aswan. Yeah, these were done with rocks and stones and chicken bones. And I'm like, no, there's obviously some mechanism that's scooping down under and pulling material out. And it's about a meter wide, and it's everywhere. It's all over Aswan, and there's no way that you cannot see it once you see it. And so, wow, okay. Oh, wow, there it is. They even have a ladder there. Amazing. I'm just kidding.
Right? Like, oh, yes, that's all they had. These wooden ladders. Don't look that underneath that wooden ladder, there's carved stairs into the side of the place.
Wow,
Built into mountain. And right, this blew my mind. And it's like, this for me was the smoking gun, because it also connects and shows a lot of what I've found in Alberta, but just in better condition. And so here again, you see what's commonly known as a cart rut. In this case, they're trying to claim that it's just a path worn down, chiseled out. It's like, no, that is an agricultural aqueduct, and that's what these things are. And that after seeing so many cases from Wandering Wolf, Michael Collins, documenting these and explaining that and showing it, that as soon as I saw this in Rex video here of Los Alamos, that exact same thing, and that it's clearly everywhere, it's hidden, and amongst it now, you'll see there's like these straight lines a lot of the time that you're going to start seeing, and that is the leftover from the form of when this geopolymer was poured. So like right here, you see this part like this, and it's like they'll run oftentimes for tens of meters or like quite a while, and it's like
there
from
were
a geological point. It's like, how does nature break that exact straight all the way through? And it's like, it didn't. That was created and poured, and that's the leftover of it.
It's similar to what you see at a site in Peru called Tipon. And so when you're there, they only show you the waterworks. That's, the modern Inca structure. And we had about an hour before we had to go back to the bus. And I told Brian, I'm going to go up the hill as far as I can. And so 3 of us wandered up this path and went up the hill following where the water was coming down. And the water trough goes all the way up and over the mountain to the other side. We didn't go up as far as we could.
Right.
But every
over it. The engineering is so insane.
Yeah, every several hundred meters was a spill off. And so it was like this area where water from this trough would spill off into. There's no water running in it now, but it would spill off into it. And the Inca, or the previous civilization that was there, had built these megalithic rocks in a square, like, housing formation. So they were collecting water that then they could use for fields or for irrigation. And it was one of the most fascinating sites. But literally, they only show you the waterworks at Tipon because they've kind of, built that up as the tourist attraction. But if you're ambitious and you have the time, God, go up the hill and you'll see so much more that's up there. That's all megalithic. And Brian's like, wow,
it's like throughout all of the mountains there, right? They're like, oh, just look at this one. And it's like, no, it's literally built through the entire mountain system. And it's actually literally built through the entire continents of South America, Central America, and North America, as you're seeing here. And like, just look at like this top right corner, and you see that one line, like that's a gutter. That's what's like a cement gutter that you'd make nowadays out of concrete. And that's what these are. And that you just have to understand and observe that it's like, this is from the pre-cataclysm. So it's at least 12,000 years, if not older. So you have that much age and or more, and potentially exponentially more, could be hundreds of thousands, maybe even million. Who really knows? But it's like that there's that much natural erosion that has since gone through it and like destroyed it, which makes it look like natural weathering. But that's from the base foundation of something that was massively built by a huge advanced global civilization prior.
Is there any evidence of like lichen up there? Are there lichen patches in any of this stuff? I'm not.
Most likely, yes. But
you see all over Peru are these, 6 foot wide lichen patches, and lichen grows at a specific elevation, and it grows at a specific rate at different elevations. And so the stuff that you see at Ollantaytambo on the walls, you're like, how old is this structure? Because those lichen patches are huge. And you're at 13,000 feet, so you've got to really
so high up in the mountains that it's like they literally could grow for like a week or a month or something a year, and it's like it like takes thousands, tens of thousands. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. They're everywhere, especially at Ollantaytambo. That site blew my mind with how much lichen was there on the walls, and so we're looking at a very advanced ancient civilization. And all the skeptics are like, well, we don't have any evidence of an ancient civilization. Are you kidding me? It's there in the stone. How do you not see it?
Right. It's literally hidden in plain sight in front of everyone.
In history, we had the technology to cut, dress, and move massive blocks of stone that we cannot move today. You go to Lebanon, you go to Baalbek, and you got 12,000 ton pieces sitting there, or 1,200. I guess it's 1,200 ton pieces sitting there, but 1,200 tons. I mean, 100 tons is 200,000 pounds. So do the math, folks. We don't have technology that can move any of this stuff. And not only did they cut, dress, and quarry it at Baalbek, but they moved it uphill to what is now the Temple of Jupiter. Originally was the Temple of Saturn, and whatever it was before that, the Trilithon and a bunch of other stones that are up there. And you've just got to wonder, how on earth, A, were they doing this, and B, moving them? It's so mind-boggling. But today we're still going, oh, this is a primitive, hunter-gatherer civilization that was doing this. And I'm like, hunter-gatherer civilization doesn't have the technique or the technology to cut stone like this. I'm sorry, they just don't.
Not to mention organize, engineer, do the mathematics, the architecture, the planning. Like it's so absolutely insane to claim that it's like, oh, they just magically assembled from like having spears and hunting animals to just engineer build stuff we can't build today.
Who's feeding this group of master masons that are building this stuff? You know, obviously you need thousands of people to do this. Who's feeding them? You know, who's watering them?
Teaching them? You need like mathematics, you need blueprints, you need it's so insane. Like if you actually work in construction, which I've now been doing for a few months, and like actually like taking in the amount of like knowledge, work, like measurements, like processes, tools, and it's just so wild and insane that it's like, and then you see what we have above here, and it's like you see what is clearly these old gutters or drainage, and that you have those straight lines, that 90-degree forms, angles. So it's like it was poured in those forms. It's like a modern day gutter that goes through on the side of your road. That's what this was. And then you see these random cracks that break, and it's like, oh, well, that's just like how cement breaks today. Oh, look at that. So no, it didn't.
It looks like it's not even a perfect cement because there's bubbles and you know, defects within it. But that
just
could
like
also
cement.
Right. That could also be the materials that they're using degrading over time while the other stuff isn't. Interesting.
Exactly, right? And so you have like at least 10,000 years of natural erosion weathering, if not like a lot more, plus the original. So see, it's like these straight.
It either much older, or it could be within the last 10,000 years, because you got to remember where this is. Where this is Los Alamos. Okay, so this isn't up your direction. I was like, oh, if this is up your direction, that was under 2 miles of ice, you know. So I'm sure that wasn't where things were happening. But looking at this looks like a lot of different sites in Peru that have these cuts in the rock formations, the natural rock formations, but they're cutting into it because they're bringing water to different sites. And obviously these reservoirs or these springs have dried up in our recent past, but the evidence of old technologies and old water,
the original foundations and like mass everywhere. So it's like you can see like that's where the forms were, that's where the wood was when it was originally poured. And that it's like then you have everything straight was concrete being poured into the forms.
Footprints.
Then you have all the cracks.
There's ancient footprints there. Wait, let's go.
Oh yeah. Like some concrete.
Are we gaming now? Oh, that's that was weird. Oh, this is
right,
really
so like all the way down there, like there.
And you can see it wraps around the corner. Yep. Wow, this is really fascinating. And it goes. There's sloughs that come off into it. Wow, are you kidding me? Yeah, this is all man-made. Wow.
Exactly, right? So it's like when you're starting to like actually see it and understand it, so it's like these are big pieces that have broken off this original mass structure where everything was poured.
Wow. You don't get rounded corners, but hey, at least they were using the natural flow of water. Today we build everything in straight lines. All our pipes are in straight lines and angular, and water.
Well, it's engineered like that. It's extremely intelligently engineered for those flows to keep the water at that straight, like level flow rate, just like they have in Peru. It's the same everywhere.
It would be activated water. It would be hydrogenated because it's keeping that natural flow. Where today's, piping technology breaks all that up, and that's why the water that comes through your tap tastes like crap, other than all the other stuff that they put in it.
So I also want to show here, so you have this outer casing layer that is on top of everything. So that was also poured on it. And it's like, that's your outside. And then you have the inside. So it's like there's two things. And it's like there's caves throughout here. And you're going to get your mind blown even more. So just see like wood being put there, like the forms when you pour it.
I'm looking at the petroglyphs
And
all that are all carved in.
yeah,
The question is this a softer stone that was originally there and they were able to carve these structures into it, or were they pouring this? Those are the two questions, because the amount of time that's passed, that there's this much degradation, it could be a poured technology, but it could all. But looking at it, it looks very unnatural. Yeah.
So definitely poured originally, and then you have civilizations inhabiting afterwards with lesser abilities, but still being able to utilize it, change it, and that's where you see some of the misdirection sort of thing of like it's like they were just reusing the original structure foundations. And so here you can see like these holes in, there's actually it's caves and apartments.
I'd be interested to know what.
Here we go. Here we go.
Sandstone, if it's something softer, because a lot of this could have been.
So there's both sandstone and limestone. That's what's. I have to give credit to Paul Cook, despite my former troubles with him. He has made these discoveries, and he found it in the UK as well as Malta as well as Egypt, traveling to all three, and that there's this limestone outer layer or inner layer, and then the sandstone, right? That they do both. And it's also in the Grand Canyon, and it's also what we see here.
This is
and in
see this at Giza as well, in the subterranean, and it's all limestone. There's some granite down there, but not much, because it's the bedrock, and the bedrock on the Giza Plateau is mostly limestone. But you see that so much water has washed through the subterranean area that whatever was in there, there's two block shapes that are just melted down from all the water that's gone through there. And this is obviously the much older structure than the rest of the Great Pyramid. And so the question is, was that built first? Was it a site originally? There's a well shaft there, so they're bringing water to the Giza Plateau, and then they built the pyramids over it, or vice versa. I'm not entirely sure, but I know going down into the structure that it is very much eroded by water, similar to what we're looking at here. Very similar, yeah.
And what Paul Cook has shown and taught is that these are the limestone inner polygonal megalithic blocks, and that you have both the sandstone and the limestone throughout, and that you have these poured holes that like those were lights, those were venting, that was plumbing. And then you see right here that you have these indentations where literally that's where your cables would run for your like electricity, your plumbing. And that he shows this in the UK, he shows this in Malta, he shows this in Jordan and Egypt. And it's like, now I'm showing you Rex finding and showing the exact same thing here in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And that it's also what I believe to have found in Alberta at Writing on Stone. But it's the specifically right here, you can see like that's where a cord would go. That's where a light or an appliance or plumbing, also up here. And that.
Well, these holes are interesting because this could have also been an observatory at nighttime. So you'd go into this cave structure.
Oh, it would definitely also have those built into it 100%.
The different, star patterns or certain stars.
The astroarchaeology, you're 100% right on that. And we need to, that's the importance of going to these places during the solstices and equinoxes and taking the pictures and documenting it and aligning it to then build the evidence in case of showing it as a worldwide former mass practice and civilization and engineering and architecture practice, right? Like
So there's a stone
stuff.
for what it's called. It's in one of the museums, well, at least a copy of it is, but you can actually go see the original stone. And the stone is cut like a model. And so it has all these waterways, it has like structures on it. And it's almost as if they were planning something that they would build at a larger structure. And looking at this looks very similar to something like that, where they would have all these like cut different waterways and pathways that water could flow. And it was almost as if they were trying to figure out the best way to flow water naturally without it, corrupting or overspilling, but actually trickling through the system. And so this is interesting that we have these, they look very natural, but obviously aren't. But the natural aspect of this is they're bringing water in a natural flow. As I was saying, they're hydrogenating water. They're using the natural, springs that were up in this area.
And using it as irrigation. And it's like they built it so that it would like then flow down. And that's a lot of the time you'll find like these agricultural like terraces and stuff that they'll like pour down into or would have utilized.
This is all come on now.
And a bit of what you've observed and are documenting of what you experienced down in Peru is it's like then the Inca and Aztec or whatnot, the civilizations afterwards that re-inhabited these areas after the collapse of the original builders and civilization and the original destruction and loss of ability and understanding to like reproduce it from the ground up. It's then they're trying to assess how to like best fix and use and apply with their primitive like carving, building, style technologies and just process knowledge that that's what you're seeing. That's why it's like some of it looks super primitive, some of it super advanced, some of it natural, right?
It's almost like they inherited the site and reconstructed what they could of it and repurposed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. This is what you see all over Peru. Everybody's like, oh, the Inca built all this. No, they did not.
They inhabited it and then tried to salvage it. And yes, they did build some repairs. Yes, they did probably build a lot of original stuff on top, but none of it, any of it, close to the quality craftsmanship or technology of what's always at the bottom and buried below, right? Like it's like how is the base exponentially more advanced than the top every time?
It would be interesting to see where these spill out into, like if they spilled out into irrigation areas or ancient fields. Obviously, considering the age of this site, I wouldn't imagine that any of that was left, but it would be interesting to see where this stuff spilled out, because you're obviously converting and reverting a water system that was naturally there. So whether or not it was a spring coming out of the hill, whatnot, but you're using this for some sort of irrigation or water source for whatever civilization was living here, because obviously this area seems very terraced for either housing or other, I couldn't imagine farming, because you'd have to build, as we were talking earlier, terra preta on top of this, which would have been huge. So, but they're obviously using these as water channels to bring water somewhere. And so that's the ultimate question, is what was the output of this water system?
Absolutely. Trying to find a couple key spots.
Give me
really.
Cat's going ballistic. I gotta go deal with her for a second. Hold on one sec, dude.
No worries, brother. And yeah, so it's several several stages of civilizations re-inhabiting past, former, more advanced civilization that poured and built the base foundation. So here, right here is what I found to be some of the prime evidence of, oh, let's skip ahead.
I'm back.
Very good. Here we go. I think this spot. Okay.
Meowing, wanting to get water from the sink, so I have to go turn the sink on. All right. Old cats.
That's a classic cat right there, right? Cat's life. Oop. Come on. Okay, so what I'm trying to highlight here quickly and show, you see the straightness here and the straightness here, and then you see this straight line, that straight line, and that straight line, that one and that one, and it's like that is a sheet of wood, 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 and that those
How
were
thick would this wood need to be to create
meters, right? Like it's megalithic blocks. They're tons by tons, and it's poured step by step by step, and that's what explains why you have these crazy straight angles, these crazy straight lines, these 90 degrees. It's because it poured into that foundation, the forms that you see in modern day concrete pouring building like we do today.
Interesting. And we do use formation. Yep.
Exactly, and it'll highlight even more right along here a bit. Here we go. Here we go. That's that right there. Oh. There you go. See that? Like that, and that, like along a lot of the canyons, the Grand Canyon itself, they're like, oh, look at these massive megalithic blocks that have got to be cut out. It's like it wasn't cut, it was actually poured, I believe. And this clearly is demonstrating.
A lot of this would have been poured. Interesting. Why would you have straight cuts like that? And then you can go back slightly if you can.
So poured as one.
You can see that line cutting through where the other block is sitting there, and you can see the other line, the vortices of those lines. Interesting. It would be nice to see beneath, just to see how many layers are stacked upon each other, or if it's just stacked on top of existing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. As we know, well, nature does make straight lines, but not in this material. Is this
a lot
path
of it's eroded?
Is this path an ancient path, or is this a modern path?
Oh yeah, absolute ancient. Like this is like
that's that giveaway right there. No, go back. Right there.
Boom, boom.
You see this on the roadside in Peru. Like you'll be driving. This is the amazing thing about Peru is like in Egypt, everything's at different sites. But in Peru, you're driving along the road and you're like, stop the bus. What's that? And on the side of the road is this cut structure into the natural bedrock, or it could be poured. And it looks a lot like that, where there's like sunken areas, very obviously striations of lines. Yep. This is fascinating. Interesting. I missed this show. I might have been out of town.
Right. So it's like it gives a new perspective, and that I'll do another full episode like showing these examples putting them next to the examples of Peru, putting them in the examples that Paul Cook has shown, and then
the post here. They found human hairs in some of these. Yeah, you find that in Peru as well, and that's interesting that you say that. Thank you. Not sure. Very, very true.
How else would that happen if not for being poured?
Yeah.
All right, so covered a lot of that. 46 minutes going into that. All right. Wasn't what I was planning on going on, but
but that's beyond fascinating because this leads
it
into
was
a lot of the stuff.
epic and good. Shall we?
What's that?
Sorry, I was freezing up a moment. Shall we segue into the second half if you're up for it? And you got any closing thoughts and ideas on that before we switch over to the plasma side of things?
I just want to say I picked up 2 amazing books at Conscious Life Expo. This one is by Katie Norris. Brilliant researcher. She spoke after I did, and so we exchanged books, and I'm looking forward to diving deep into that. And I finally got to meet Mike Ricksecker, and I bought his book on the mysterious triangles of Alaska. So super fascinated with that.
Really?
Yeah, Mike was a good. Met him the first day that I was there, and I'm just like, Mike, and he's like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Hans Dietrich. He's like, oh my God, you've chatted on my post a couple of times. I'm like, yeah, not quite the asshole that I am online sometimes, but if things flare out at me, I might comment on them. But just wanted to meet you, and I love your work, and yeah, we all got to hang out on Super Bowl Sunday, which was Super Bowl Sunday for everybody because nobody was watching the game. We were all just engaged in conversation, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was a good time.
That's even better, right? Just bringing the people together. 3/4 of people don't watch the football. I actually, for like
I watched
the first
time show, and I was kind of blown away with the Saturnian symbology in the halftime show. That it really blew my mind.
Do go on.
If you look at the layout, there's 9 squares. So the 9 squares become the Saturn's cube. 6 of them become the Saturn's cube, and the others become aspects of it. And they're all in black. It was just there was a lot of interesting symbology going on in the halftime show that I think 99% of the people watching it completely missed. But it wasn't the greatest of halftime shows ever. Wasn't into the song, but it was interesting to watch. Obviously, because you have the stage, and so what are you gonna present? Or what are your handlers going to tell you to present? And so, I mean, if you have that kind of an audience, there's obviously some sort of, manipulation going on there. We got to remember Katy Perry coming out, dressed as the Baphomet, riding the golden, the golden lion or whatever she was riding during her halftime show a couple years ago when she did her thing. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on at these shows, and so everybody needs to pay attention. But the one thing that blew my mind was the Hims and Hers commercial. Everybody's into Ozempic. Ozempic's got some horrific problems, obviously, and so they start off their ad with the healthcare system or the food system is poisoning us, and it's like, okay, but you're owned by BlackRock and other corporations that are feeding us this poison, and now you're giving us the solution. Wait, what's
right?
wrong?
Like,
What's
nice,
wrong with
sleight of hand?
It's like the same people, catch a thief to send a thief to catch a thief kind of scenario, and it was very fascinating to watch. I'm glad I'm not into that, but it's always the halftime show and the ads that are the ones that everybody seems to stick around to see what's going on there,
right? And so one aspect I was intrigued with was that they had Kendrick Lamar and that the last song he finished with was the call out the pedo-ness and that you're into A minor. It's like, was that a message that they're actually calling out the
or
bad?
or signaling to their crowd, wink, wink, right?
Well, it's like the drama in it. It's like it was a diss track kind of to Drake for like him and Diddy sort of thing.
Yep, exactly.
And it's like, are they just washing it and making it look like they're doing something, or are they actually doing something about it? I guess.
We'll
Well,
see. Time will tell. And I think a lot of what's going on in politics right now, it's like rapid fire to get some things done. And I'm politically homeless. I sit on the fence and watch both sides, and it's really interesting to watch. But everybody's freaking out over the rapid fire, but they're not realizing that some of this stuff takes time to bake in. You're reconstructing a system that's taken 40 years to build, and so you've got to start somewhere. So some of it's good, some of it's horrific. I've lost work over it because of I work with companies that deal with communicable diseases in Africa and whatnot, and so most of my clients that I work with lost all their funding because of all this, and yeah, it's been really interesting to watch. I don't know where to go with that. Anyway, sidetrack there. Let's move on.
fair enough. But it's true. It's interesting times to be alive. Godheart Guardian, a wizard, never gives away his magic. Well, at least not in the moment. All I can say is Dr. Dongo decided to F around and find out. Do you know what I'm talking about, Hans? Or
Zero.
the have you ever heard of or watched the YouTube channel Old World Florida?
I have not.
There's a reason why. You
I
you'd
don't
probably
know.
enjoy like 25 to 50% of it, and then you'd probably be repulsed by the other 50%. He does do some good work, but we've had a bit of a beef going back and forth.
You have.
Yeah, he's got like 100,000 subscribers ish on his channel. Shem Tartarian Truth, right?
We've been
Yeah,
on.
so um Shem's good friends with both of us, and it's like, so Shem did a New Year's Tartarian Truth stream with and so this guy calls himself Dr. Narco Longo, and
It's all in the.
exactly, it's all in the name, and there's rumors that he actually got pinched selling drugs around a school and narked to get himself out of it. So I called him out on that. But anyways, Shem and him did this stream on New Year's, like the Truthy Awards or something, and it was like Shem calling out, making fun of like all the biggest grifters, and I didn't watch to the end. I guess at the end, this wannabe Dr. Dongo went on a monologue cussing me out. I still haven't seen it, but I found out the other night, and then I hacked his channel and posted a couple of diss videos on his own channel, cussing him out, caused a whole bunch of a stir, and cage match on top of the Ohio Serpent Mound, and that there's already like this YouTube meetup event happening there. So we're like, hey, why don't we try to turn it into Truther Fights YouTube Fight Club? And I was like, well, I call this guy out, and I don't know. I don't condone violence, but hey, for entertainment purposes, on raising awareness of the Serpent Mound, Why?
We're all each other's missing puzzle pieces, even the bad ones, and we're all navigating waters. And instead of burning bridges, let's forge path forward. That's kind of the key to the undiscovered country, right? That's the future, and we all need to be figuring that out. Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. Anyway.
Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, not putting too much effort or energy into it going forward. I think, I don't know, I don't even know if he's addressed it publicly, but whatever. Read about his own game. I laughed for like 24 hours straight, and moving on. Not put more energy into that. What we are putting,
Sesame Street, we've got Bert and Ernie.
and between them, what I am putting energy into is, well, and shout out to David Stiggs, because he actually about a month ago showed me, it's like a Microsoft AI program, and I'm pretty sure it's the exact same
Not
one.
Copilot, but something other, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's what this JD's channel is using. But it's what's interesting. I've been following this channel now for a few weeks and catching up on their videos, and it's like how the AI are keeps learning, and like he keeps feeding more information and research into it, and then just the progression, and it's like he's doing it into like the plasma, into alchemy, into occult, into electric universe, into like all the crazy cool breakthrough fringe science stuff that like we're already looking into and work with ourselves. And yeah, so I'm gonna play a little bit of it right now. If
Sure, it is for fun having beef with a vegetarian, but vegetarians need to realize that beef is vegetarian. So anyway.
My mom, actually, lifelong vegetarian, 75 years of age, 1 month ago was like, I'm doing the carnivore diet. I need to lose some weight. I hear good things. And she switched over, and she's actually like eating lamb, beef, all sorts of stuff, just enjoying it. And it's like, good for you, mom. Good for moms.